yeah, I'm gonna do it. So I'm talking about flower pots and wall art, maybe more tables. Oh, what about, trust me, this is gonna help you with overwhelm, because as you start experimenting, you're gonna wanna do all the things. Squeezed as hard as I could, broke the tile, and it was at that moment where my world shifted. Get comfortable with the tools and give yourself some grace. It's gonna feel weird and awkward. I mean, this is something you've never done before. Let's get to it. Welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. I've been working in mosaic art for over 25 years now, and it's a passion to say the least. It's also what inspired me to teach for most of my 25 years, as well as create this channel where I can teach what I know and love here on YouTube. I can remember it like it was yesterday when I made my first mosaic project. It was the best and toughest season probably of my life. Making mosaics, in a way, saved me. But let me back up first. My dad did mosaics when he was in college in the 1950s, so I grew up with his mosaic work in our family house for as long as I can remember. So to give you a little background on why I want to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art is because when I learned how to make mosaics, it saved me, but I also felt a little lost as far as how to progress in my skill set. So let me quickly explain. I've always been fascinated by mosaic art. So when a friend asked me if I wanted to join her in a mosaics class, taking into account the season of life that I was in, it was a firm yes. So the mosaics class was a beginner mosaics class, and it was held at a paint your own pottery studio here in Miami. So the first session, we would create our tesserae. The second and third sessions, we would tile our substrates. And then the fourth session would be a grouting session. And the project that I chose was a table. So it was at that first tiling session where I absolutely fell in love with mosaics. So you can imagine sitting there, tiling substrates along with other people who are also loving mosaics, tiling their substrates, and we're talking about, you know, branching out with the different tesserae that we want to try. And before I knew it, I was already mentally thinking about my next mosaic project, which I'm sure many of you can relate to. I was really like, okay, well, you know, whatever's an acceptable substrate that I can apply mosaic to, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So I'm talking about flower pots and wall art, maybe more tables. Oh, what about, and before you knew it, I was off and running and the hamster started getting on the wheel. I also started shopping for additional tesserae at that time. And I went into dreaming, planning, shopping mode. Like obsessed. Okay? And my thought was, well, I don't want to always have to go back to the pottery studio to create more tesserae. So let me see what else is out there for me. And wow, did I find a lot of stuff. I also found that I overwhelmed myself. I was doing so much planning and gathering, but I didn't really have a clear path as far as what was I going to do next? How was I going to get started on that next mosaic project without an instructor beside me? So the instructor at the pottery studio was great. She was just there though to teach that basic first step, which is break your tesserae, adhere it to a substrate. And honestly, we all use the same adhesive, which now that I know better, did not apply. We were not all working on the same substrates. And because she was just teaching that first step, I did feel a little lost when I was done with the class. I was ready to continue on, but I really wasn't sure how to do that. So in the description of this video and all of my videos on YouTube, I always list my favorite tools and substrates, adhesives, grout, accessories that I use in the studio to help me get my job done. And I also do the same thing where I list in the description, if I'm doing a tutorial, I list all of the items that I used. This is part of your guide as far as shortening your learning curve. This is information that I wish I had over 25 years ago when I was just getting started. There was no internet back then. And if you're wondering, what are all of the steps involved in creating a mosaic? What are the things to take into consideration? Do you need clarity on some of those things? I've created a handy checklist for you that will guide you through the process of what you need to take into account and just think about as you're planning your next mosaic. And I'll include a link to that checklist down below in the description as well. You can access all of this information if you're watching on your desktop computer by clicking Show More under the video description. And if you're watching on your tablet or your smartphone, you can click the down arrow to the right of the video title. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you what I would do if I was just getting started in mosaic today so that you don't suffer from overwhelm like I did. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. So thinking back to my first mosaic class, the first thing that was decided for me, which I'm glad it was what the tesserae would be that we would use in that class. Seeing as it was at a paint your own pottery studio, we were all required to paint 4-inch by 4-inch square ceramic tiles. I was thrilled. I loved this. I was happy with it because I love the look of pique-assiette mosaic. Now, if you aren't familiar, pique-assiette mosaic is a style of mosaic that takes broken tile, broken crockery, plates, bowls, and mugs, found objects, and puts it all together in the same mosaic. So although I wasn't fully doing a pique-assiette mosaic, I was going down that path and I was learning a little bit of what was involved. So yeah, using broken tile is sort of like pique-assiette mosaic. It's getting me there. It's helping me learn more about how to break ceramic. And it kind of lessened the intimidation for me and gave me a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of confidence. So my advice regarding tesserae, if you're just starting out, is to choose a tesserae that you want to work with. One tesserae, preferably a flat tesserae. You don't have to get all crazy right now with buying all sorts of different types of tesserae. You also don't have to get curved tesserae. Start with one type of tesserae that you're interested in. Make sure it's flat. And then later on, you can get into making a mixed media mosaic sometime in the future. Trust me, this is going to help you with overwhelm. Because as you start experimenting, you're going to want to do all the things. Okay? I know, I'm guilty. You're going to want to do all of the things and it's going to get overwhelming. So just have very focused intention when it comes to your first mosaic and what you want to work with. I can tell you that once I started working with broken plates, bowls, and mugs in my mosaic work, I never looked at plates, bowls, and mugs the same way. Even now. I look at it as, oh, it's mosaic tesserae. Like, I don't fret if a plate, bowl, or mug drops and breaks here at my house because I'm going to use it. But you're going to start to see things in a different way the more you experiment. It can also get overwhelming. So just very focused intention, one tesserae, preferably flat, to get started. So the next thing I would advise is to choose a tool or tools for the tesserae of your choice. Now, I know this sounds like a big old duh, but stick with me here. Going back to that first mosaic class that I took, when it came time to our first tiling session, the instructor said, okay guys, time to break your ceramic tile. here's how you're going to do it. And the only tool that she supplied or suggested was a hammer. Now, a hammer is great for breaking ceramic tile. Does the job. Also does a very good job of decimating smaller pieces of your ceramic tile. And when you've paid a lot of money for the class and you've hand painted those tile, or even if it's a beloved whatever, you don't want to decimate your pieces of tesserae. You want to try to cut them strategically so that not only they are whatever size you want, but also so that you don't cut them down so much that they tend to, kind of get decimated. They're just not usable. So for the second tiling session, I took my dad's ceramic tile nippers to the class. They are pretty much the same type of blade that we use nowadays on ceramic tile nippers. They did not have any padding on the handles, however, so that was quite, wow, I can't believe my dad used those. So the instructor was like, yeah, what are those? And I had no idea what I was doing, but I put a tile between the jaws of the nippers, squeezed as hard as I could, broke the tile, and it was at that moment where my world shifted. Using the appropriate tool for the tesserae of choice is huge as far as how your mosaic will turn out. Not only in how you're able to cut specific shapes, but also it's going to help you enjoy the tiling process. You're going to be able to get into a flow or a groove of mosaic making. But also beware, the more you enjoy the tool in tesserae, the more time will just sort of, not matter. And personally, I think a creative escape is needed and encouraged, but also understand there have been times where I have lost sleep because I've stayed up way too late working on a mosaic, and then the next day I was so anxious and eager to get back to that mosaic. So my advice is to invest in a tool or tools to get the job done. If you're interested in working with ceramic tile, get your ceramic tile nippers. If you're interested in plates, bowls, and mugs, or some other hard type of tesserae, you might need compound tile nippers. If you're interested in working with stained glass for stained glass mosaic, get a glass cutter, cutter oil, and your running pliers. If you're interested in glass tile mosaic, even smalty, then get a set of wheeled glass nippers. Find out what tool or tools you need, spend the money to get them. Get comfortable with the tools and give yourself some grace. It's going to feel weird and awkward. I mean, this is something you've never done before. And you may feel like you're not doing it right. And you may be correct. You're not doing it right. But you know what? You're going to sit there, you're going to experiment, and you're going to practice, and you're going to get more comfortable, and you're going to build up your confidence. Oh, and one other piece of advice when working with hand tools, and take it from me, learn from my past experience. Always, always, always be aware of where your fingers are when you are squeezing on the handles of your hand tools. I had an accident very early on. I really should have gone to the hospital to get stitches, and I didn't. And I've heard from other students who have gotten stitches. Yes, we are working with materials and tools that can cause injuries. We're also able to make mosaic art without sustaining these types of injuries. If we're careful, we're paying attention to where our fingers are, we're wearing our protective eyewear, and we're just being cautious. You can create beautiful mosaic art without injury. Are you going to get cuts on your hands? Yeah, that's inevitable. You're dealing with glass. Ceramic, the glaze on there is fired to be glass. So sure, we're going to get cuts, but Those more serious injuries we can avoid if you're just cautious and aware of where your fingers are when you're squeezing down on the handles of these hand tools. So to recap, you're going to decide on one tesserae type, and you're going to get the tool or tools you need to take care of the job. Okay, moving on. The next piece of advice I have is regarding substrates. My first mosaic was a table, and I guess looking back now, that maybe wasn't my best choice. It's not that doing a table is not a good choice. That's not what I'm saying. It's just I was in a time crunch. So there were 4 total sessions for the mosaic class. Only 2 of those were tiling sessions, and I don't like to feel rushed. And I did feel a bit rushed. We were also in a classroom setting where we all like to talk and laugh, and I'm sure that slowed me down a bit. But I also, at that time and season in my life, I was working so much in magazine publishing that I didn't have the time to do homework. And so I did struggle a little bit with needing to get that all tiled so that my substrate would be ready to be grouted at that last session. So my advice with substrates for your first mosaic would be to start small. Start small and start flat. Start with a substrate that is flat, that is roughly the size of a sheet of copy paper. This could be something like wall art, for example. And I will say, if you do go that route, make sure you adhere your hanging hardware to the back before you even begin tiling and grouting. It will be very frustrating for you if you have to figure out how to adhere the hanging hardware once your mosaic is done. And you possibly could damage your mosaic. So just do the hanging hardware first, and then you can get to your tiling and your grouting. Tiling a flat substrate will allow you to figure out how do the tesserae feel, how do the tools work. It'll still allow you to get into some sort of pattern play if you want to experiment with using some larger tesserae and some smaller tesserae. It will also allow you to get into a tiling flow or groove, and basically it's just going to allow you to get kind of comfortable, get your feet under you. So you also want to choose a substrate for mosaic that is appropriate for mosaic. So we're talking about wood and glass and ceramic, cement, acrylic, hard plastic, metal. All of these are acceptable substrates for mosaic. And if you do go the wood route, make sure you seal the wood before you start adhering your mosaic work. And I've done a video here on this channel all about how to seal wood for mosaic, and I'll include a link to that down below in the description for you. My hope for you is that your first mosaic gives you all the feels and magic like my first mosaic did for me. It changed my life. I know that sounds dramatic, but look at what I do for a living now. Huge. And then once you get comfortable with working with a flat substrate, you can then move on to, let's say, a flower pot or a garden sphere, whatever floats your boat. So to recap, you're going to start with one tesserae type, you're going to get the tool or tools needed for that tesserae type, and you're going to get a mosaic substrate that's acceptable for mosaic, that's not too big. The next bit of advice has to do with adhesives. Your tesserae and substrates will dictate what adhesives you can use. Sometimes it's one adhesive, sometimes it's a few adhesives. And sometimes you need to think about where your mosaic will ultimately be displayed or used, meaning take into account the environment. I know, it's a lot to keep a hold of. So that checklist that I was referencing earlier is going to help you in deciding and coming up with some of these answers as you go along the planning process of your mosaic. Learning what adhesives work best for your tesserae and your substrates is partly listening to the experts, but it's also in you experimenting. If I were just starting out in mosaic, I would use the KISS method. Now the KISS method, K-I-S-S, the KISS method is something that I learned in journalism school back in college, which stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. Now, I'm not calling you stupid. I just think that the acronym is really funny and how journalists came up with it. But basically, yeah, keep it simple, meaning keep it basic. This is your first mosaic. We want to make sure that you enjoy it to the fullest. We aren't sure yet if you're going to like it or not. So let's make it as easy as possible for you to get going with it and to stick with it. So what that means is, don't choose an adhesive that you have to mix up. Choose an adhesive that you either have to take the cap off of or the lid off of in order to get going and start tiling. This is not the time to learn about mixing up thinset. That's a great opportunity if you're in a classroom setting with an instructor. But when you're on your own, and you aren't really sure if you're going to like this in the first place, start simple. Get an adhesive that is easy for you to take the cap off, the lid off, and get going with your tiling. It's going to make things so much easier whether you're spending 2 hours tiling or you just have like 15 minutes and you cannot wait. You want to get in there and start tiling. And if you've got an adhesive that allows you to do that, great. Later on, you can learn about all of the different adhesives and how some of them are going to be better and would be better than what you chose, even though what you chose is still going to work okay. But you'll learn the differences, and at that point, you can get into mixing up your own thinset, or let's say, mixing up epoxy sculpt. But for right now, you just want an adhesive that is easy to use. So I'm talking about like a white PVA glue, like Weilbacher, maybe a silicone, like Lexel, tile adhesive, also known as mastic, and they even make thinset right now that's pre-mixed. So go with what's easiest that's going to help you get to the tiling quicker and go back and forth with the tiling quicker. Okay, so to recap, 1 tesserae type. You're going to get the tool or tools needed for that 1 tesserae type. You're going to choose a flat substrate that's not too big, that's acceptable for a mosaic, and you're going to choose an adhesive that you don't have to mix up. I get a lot of questions about design and color use from folks who are just getting started in mosaic. They want to know, where do I get my designs from? And how do I work with color? How do I put colors together? And I understand your design, or sometimes lack thereof, can stop you in your tracks. Think about writers and writer's block. So as a mosaic artist, you're sitting there with your substrate, you're excited, you're anxious to start tiling, but you have a lack of, I don't want to say creativity, but you just have a lack of design. And so, you just sort of sit there frustrated, you're like, what am I going to do now? So I've got some advice on what I've done since the beginning of my mosaics career, and it's also relieved my general anxiety. I keep a notepad with me at all times, in my purse, my car, my tote, everywhere. And this allows me to sketch or jot down ideas that pop into my head. Maybe I'm out and about and I see something that like, oh, that's inspiring. Whether it's a object, whether it's a color combination, maybe something comes to me as far as a tesserae type that I would like to use, or maybe a combination of tesserae types that I would like to put together. It allows me to sketch on the spot, make whatever little notes I want to make, and then at some point in the future, I can go back. Maybe I color it in with colored pencil. Maybe I think about that sketch and I use that as a jumping off point for a mosaic design that I will actually use. And sometimes it's just like something I had to get out and it stays there. I don't ever do anything with it again, but it's just for my eyes. It is a way to, I guess, open your mind's eye a little bit in getting the creative ideas going. There's no pressure. Like I said, it's just for me. Nobody looks through my sketchbooks and, you know, critiques or whatever. It's just for me. And sometimes I will go back and look through my sketchbooks and it will bring about a totally different creative idea that has nothing to do with that thing, but just for whatever reason, something else pops into my head and I then have a design that I can run with. So this is a topic I'm going to get more in depth with in future videos, but for right now, let's just keep it simple and easy and doable. So to recap, you're going to choose one tesserae type, preferably a flat tesserae type. You're going to get a tool or tools to help you take care of that tesserae type. You're going to pick a substrate that's acceptable to Mosaic, preferably small. You're going to get an adhesive that you don't have to mix up, and you're going to start sketching ideas and things that pop into your head, whether it's in a sketchbook or on a sheet of copy paper. See where things go for you. I'll include a list down below in the description for everything that I used and shared in today's video in case you'd like to get going with making mosaics of your own. Let's see how this goes. I got so sick over the holidays. So let's see, we've got our hot tea, we've got our tissues, and we are ready to do this thing. Do it, do it, do it. That didn't make sense. Where were we? Please forgive me for sounding a little stopped up. I was gonna say something else, but that's really gross. Snotty. Blech. Okay. Now, here we go. Oops, wait a minute. Yeah, it's okay. And we're back. That was weird. I had to change the battery. That doesn't happen. This isn't a long video yet. Yet. Julie has found her mouth. Okay, did I get everything so far? I think I did. Oh gosh, I gotta leave in 10 minutes. What are you still doing here? Go make your mosaic, okay? For more mosaic inspiration, check out one of these two videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!